Yeah, very warm welcome. It's Andy. It's Freedom Talk Radio. Tonight we've got Alan Dransfield and Len's Lawrence. Now, Poison Pilot and Misdiagnosis. Well, and mental health abuse, of course. What would you normally do in that circumstance? Well, you'd go and talk to the ICO, wouldn't you? But no, that don't work either. So we've got two separate cases here. An update with Len Lawrence and Alan M. Dransfield regarding trying to get your word out. Len.
Right. Hello, Andy. Hello, Alan. Hello, audience. It's been a long battle, Andy, trying to prove that I was not mentally ill. And I've had to face these allegations since around 2004. And earlier this year in France, February the 12th, 2026, I'll hold it in front of you. A French court in Europe handed down a judgment where there's no rights of appeal, and it's a final judgment, and it upholds that leaking oil contaminants from aircraft engines into the air conditioning system are causing brain injury and other neuro injuries. It's now been recognised in France as an industrial injury. In the UK, and I've been, along with many others, fighting this since 2004, the government has now set up an all-party committee. Well, there's very little they need to do because the judgment's already been held down in France. But throughout this last 22 years, the efforts and the attacks to say that I was mentally ill have been incredible. Thanks to people like you, the late Kevin Ball, and others, many others, we finally got there. Alan Dransfield has been also very helpful to me in helping me to draft emails in order to gain subject access request and freedom of information requests when I was being obstructed. But what really brought this to a head was on the 30th of March 2022, when Avon and Somerset Police, headed by Chief Constable Sarah Crew, raided my house, arrested me, searched my home, seized my computer and iPhone, and took me to Bridgewater Police Custody Centre. On arrival at that police station, I was booked in by the custody sergeant. Then I was taken to a custody cell with a carer. The custody door was left open, but guarded initially by the woman police constable who had arrested me, woman police constable Alana Snow of Bridgewater Police Custody Centre. Not long after, I was taken for a medical by a which was carried out not by a doctor, by a G4S nurse, Nurse Bell. Avon and Somerset Police and G4S will not give me that nurse's full identity to enable the GMC, Nursing and Midwifery Council, to investigate this nurse. The nurse failed to record on the medical report that I held a headway brain injury card, and she also failed to record a call of protection medical certificate of mental capacity, which can be evidence of being with His Honour Judge Simon Oliver on or about the 12th of April 2012. Anyway, the nurse denied me access to some of my medication prescribed by Derriford Hospital. And I requested a doctor. I wasn't given access, but what she wrote on the clinical notes, I was fit to be interviewed and taken away. I was returned to the cell, the door left open, guarded by woman police constable Alana Snow. Then not long after, to what appeared first to be paramedics, dressed in green overalls, presented themselves at my entrance to my cell. They were later joined by a third, a lady dressed all in black. And then the alarm bells really started to ring. They were not paramedics. They were not medical officers. They were free mental health nurses employed by Somerset NHS Foundation Trust at this present time. Their names were Bruce Matthews, Benjamin McAvoy, and Carly Reynolds, but their names are not entered in the custody records. The time they arrived at my custody cell and the time they left. And they tried so hard, Andy, to have me detained under the Mental Health Act. They failed. Then it was a case of finding out who was at the centre of this. We now know His Honour Judge Simon Oliver from Reading County Court, or to give me his full title, The Worshipful Brother, His Honour Judge Simon Oliver, Berkshire Freemasonry, Provincial Grand Rank. Is it a coincidence that the solicitor that the police chose for me was not the duty solicitor, was not the headway brain injury solicitor? It was a provincial grand officer of Somerset Freemasonry.
No coincidence.
Hang on. The officer who oversaw my arrest and my questioning just happened to be a worshipful master with Somerset Freemasonry. That officer actually wrote me a letter of apology later, but no one else has. Then the real attack, because they couldn't certify me, they set the mental health nurses on me. Oh, they accused me of everything, Andy. Multiple threats to attack the public with anthrax. When I became aware of that, I notified the security services, including MI5 and other agencies. Allegations that I'd beaten up my wife and assaulted my wife and children. Thames Valley Police would not give me the evidence that would clear me of this allegation. The Crown Prosecution London did. Many allegations. Oh, I falsified my headway brain injury card. The National Police Chief Council chair, they dealt with that. The card is authentic, but it has given a real insight. Such was the interest in me. There was around 150 entries into my medical records over a few months until the Chief Medical Officer of Somerset, who was a consultant psychiatrist, blocked access to my medical records. Both he, who was a consultant psychiatrist, and a second consultant psychiatrist did not buy into the allegations being made but it shows how, in this instance, Avon and Somerset Police under Chief Constable Sarah Crewe has weaponised psychiatry and mental health nurses to attack victims. But the real sting in this, and thanks to Alan Dransfield, I wrote to the Information Commissioner's office, and the man has now left. He was the senior investigating officer there. And I gained a disclosure against the IOPC, that's the Independent Office of Police Conduct. What had happened prior to my arrest, a very brave detective, superintendent, detective, inspector were investigating woman Chief Superintendent Claire Arms, who was head of operational support at Avon and Somerset Police, with responsibility for custody and criminal investigations. Claire Arms had a finding recorded against her for the obstruction of justice in my case, which involves Justice Simon Oliver, the Court of Protection, the Court of Appeal. It was sent to the IOPC, who returned it to Avon and Somerset for a local resolution without informing me of the findings or without my agreement, and that is when the attack came. But anyway, the aerotoxic, that's been won. But what is interesting, they have known about this problem since 1955. And it's been covered up and covered up and covered up. Why tens of thousands of people, probably hundreds of thousands, have suffered brain injury or died. But anyway, that part of my life can be concluded because we now know. My own company, who I flew for, British Aerospace, had done a secret out-of-court settlement on fumes regarding the BAE 146. I was never told, nor any of the other pilots, to the best of my knowledge. Anyway, the real focus now has become what the police did to me, and if they'd done it to me, they would have done it to many others. And obviously, the total lack of safeguarding for vulnerable adults and children. And this is focusing very much on the Court of Protection. And in my case, judges like Simon Oliver, who did not and had not held Court of Protection authorization when he conducted my hearing. Many of the documents I've never been allowed to see for almost 20 years, and specifically the files held by the Bar Standards Board, which they would not disclose to me. I've now recovered 10 boxes of them. The Bar Standards Board won't speak to me. I've also recovered other files, my case files from the government legal services. I've also recovered a letter that Avon and Somerset Police were seeking from the High Court, Deputy High Court Judge Richard Ainley, QC, 1 King's Bench Walk. And Mr. Ainley had in 2012 extracted an admission for the barrister Dominic Brazil, who was previously at 1 King's Bench Walk and is now at another chambers, I believe it's 13 chambers in London, that I had been a patient under Part 7 of the Mental Health Act and subject to the Court of Protection. But Brazil never disclosed my data to the Court of Protection when he set about placing hundreds of thousands of pounds upon me, instrumental in the theft of my home and my belongings. Brazil himself was suspended for a period of time on another matter, lying to his chambers, yet his back working as a barrister. Back to you.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Len, but it's very good news also that you are making headway, and a lot of people have not been fortunate to get their cases like this. But I'm going to go on to Alan now because, we all rely on freedom of information, we all rely on subject access, but even in Alan's cases and multiple cases that Alan's dealt with, you can't actually get the answers you want. Over to you, Alan.
No, it's disappeared, I think, Andy.
He's fallen asleep.
Hello? No, it's not there. Okay, I'll carry on, Andy, briefly.
Yeah, no worries.
What I have here is a Court of Protection medical certificate. Leonard Michael Lawrence. It was issued by Buckinghamshire Mental Health Trust. But they wrote to me, denied issuing it. Anyway, I have that certificate. But what's important about these Court of Protection medical certificates, which are used to detain people under the Mental Health Act, which inevitably results in the loss of their home and their assets, that these certificates contain no serial number, no embossment on the paper, and no tracking mechanism. So it's very difficult to track these certificates. And when people start to question why their loved ones or even themselves have been detained under the Mental Health Act, they face civil restraint orders, extended civil restraint orders, with threats of imprisonment and the theft of all your assets. So it's a real Achilles knee, how these how people are not protected.
Absolutely. It's shocking. It's been going on for years and years. There's many people with cases. How do we protect people
But
who are vulnerable from in the
what
future?
I'm going to send you is the handwritten instructions, and you can put them online, of what Simon Oliver sent to Master Bancroft Rimmer in the Civil Court of Appeal. He sent instructions to Bancroft Rimmer that my appeal was to be refused. Very interesting, because neither Oliver held a Court of Protection authorization in 2012, and in a letter from the Court of Appeal, Master Mary Bancroft Rimmer at the Civil Court of Appeal has never held a Court of Protection authorization. So you can see that how easy it is to abuse. You work all your life you save to buy a house, and at a flick of a pen, a barrister and a solicitor can seize your house and all your assets. The very people who should be protecting you, the police, are not. Whilst there's some good officers, equally there are many others not so good. I have encountered significant obstructions by Avon and Somerset Police, and particularly by the Professional Standards Department, headed by Detective Superintendent Larissa Hunt, by their Police and Crime Commissioner, Claire Mooney, and her sidekick, Sally Fox. These names come up in other cases. So, how do people get protected? Well, I've been accused of being by the mental health nurse, he was McAvoy, of being delusional about the call to protection. I've traced those call to protection certificates. They were with a lady called Helen Mary Cliff in the official solicitor's office. And here is the story where it all comes together. My former wife's barrister, Dominic Brazil, at 1 King's Bench Walk, had been in possession or had known that his instructing solicitor, Graham Fraser, then at BP Collins, was in possession of my financial records that had been stolen. My wife had sworn an affidavit, I don't work and have no income. When told there'd been crime referenced, not very long after, I found myself certified under Part 7 of the Mental Health Act by Dr. Jeremy Royce from Signet Healthcare, Godden Green, when an NHS consultant, locum consultant psychiatrist, Dr. Amalofi, said my cognition was grossly intact. Royd sent his certificate of mental capacity, I think it's to a solicitor called Sarah Benfield. It was passed to Helen Cliff in the official solicitor's office. And thereafter, Helen Mary Cliff, not the official solicitor, made all the clinical and financial decisions on me. But what I didn't know, His Honour Judge Simon Oliver knew, prior to joining the official solicitor's office, Helen Cliff practiced as a solicitor in Reading, where Helen Cliff had briefed the barrister Dominic Brazil at 1 King's Bench Walk in her family law cases. So now Cliff had left to join the government legal services. Brazil gets me certified, passed to Helen Cliff, and she takes full control.
You couldn't make that up.
You couldn't. Then she allows, what's his name? Dominic to Brazil to place hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds of cost on me. It's that simple. But my battle since 2006 has been trying to get hold of my records. Possibly the most obstructive chambers I've encountered was 1 Garden Court Chambers, the then chambers of Stephen Cobb and Janet Braisley. And still they refused to give me the files. I now have those files, and my colleagues have them. And what they read, incapable of legal discussion with the official solicitor or any solicitor instructed by the
Len,
official.
can I just interrupt? Because it is a Zoom call, and we're
Yeah,
limited to time.
yeah.
I think we've got Alan on the line for an update. Alan. Oh, he's unmuted now, so
Okay, the significance of 1 Garden Court Chambers. It was the chambers of Stephen Cobb. Stephen Cobb is now Lord Justice Stephen Cobb, the President of the Court of Protection and the President of the Family Division. Helen Cliff has a remarkable history, particularly with the late Robert Greene and Brian Gerrish, and a young girl called Holly.
Holly Greg.
Holly Gregg. It's incredible. As you know, I was a Freemason. I don't attend Freemasonry now, but the Grand Lodge, David Staples, he could have stopped this attack on me by Simon Oliver, but he didn't. He allowed it to continue. And as a consequence, members of the Masonic Lodge, which I was once a member, which included detectives who were instructors at the detective training school at Hendon, and detectives who were within the Metropolitan Police Obscene Publication Squad, the paedophile unit. Everyone's left. That lodge is no longer in existence. But fortunately, they have given me support, and it's enabled me to unravel this. And that is why I've shared a lot of the data. Now, why aren't they protected? Why aren't the elderly protected? Why aren't the vulnerable protected? Why are little children not protected when they become vulnerable? That is a question Lord Justice Cobb will need to ask, and more importantly, so will Chief Constable Sarah Crewe, together with the Chief Constable of Thames Valley, Jason Hogg, and others.
As Maggie Tuttle would put it, it's $1 million industry. And that may be the answer.
I still have Maggie Tuttle's badge she gave me, children screaming to be heard.
So
But according,
adults and vulnerable people.
yeah, but according to one of the mental health nurses at Avon and Somerset NHS Trust, I'm delusional about high-level paedophilia. Well, I think, unfortunately, Michael Haynes, the former head of the Obscene Publications Squad, the paedophile unit, died last year. But a lady who could certainly address that issue is Dr. Lois Lee from America, San Francisco, who attended your conference in Perth, Children of the Night. Remember that?
Yeah, she's awesome. She'd do anything for anyone, and it proved it by coming over to the UK.
Yeah, I had dinner with her that night. But according to the mental health nurses, she's delusional.
Oh, she's delusional as well.
Yeah, when I was being questioned about the police by the police, um, um, I was described as bullish. I wasn't. I was traumatized, and I talked about child abuse, and I don't think that was part of their planned interview. We've got the tape, and I talked about mothers whose cases had come up against against Simon Oliver. They're called Hague mothers. There's mothers who have left their homes, taken their children, and fled outside outside the UK jurisdiction, Cyprus and other countries. Those mothers are under attack. Like I say, the people who should be protecting them is the police. I talked about the Blair twins, you know, um, what's his name?
Northern
Uh,
Ireland, yeah.
Joe and Bobby Blair. I talked about Andy. You know Andy, not
Oh,
you,
sorry, that Andy.
the other
Andy from
Andy.
Inverness, yeah.
Andy from Inverness, who was in the RAF, where he was sexually abused and raped in the Scottish children's homes. I mean, Andy got me my computer. They were also interested in a man called Andy Peacher. Yeah, I know.
Don't know him anymore.
No, he's done more for safeguarding than a lot of chief constables. He has a very deep knowledge. Um, but it's all because of Alan Transfield and understanding the data access and subject access and freedom of information requests. Um, but why the police are still withholding. I say one of the most serious allegations made against me by Tanya Poor, a mental health nurse from Somerset NHS Trust, multiple threats to attack the public with anthrax. That was going to
Ridiculous.
get me killed.
Sorry, Len, we've got the last few seconds.
Yeah, right. Anyway, look, I'll come back and I'll talk further with you with Alan when you're convenient.
I'll find a better platform for Alan to join.
But the man has a lot of knowledge.